This is a one-speaker meeting. Please welcome our speaker tonight, Patti.
Hi, I'm Patti. I'm an alcoholic. First, let's give it up for Danny with 8 days leading a meeting this size, okay? Wow, you know, I haven't been to the Marina Center probably for like 19 years. I came here once because they wanted me to speak at the 6:45 a.m. meeting on the second step, and I just couldn't do it. So I realized either like I was still insane or I just wasn't good in the mornings. But it was like a horrifying experience, and I just sat there with just so much shame, and I just couldn't speak. And what I loved about this room is the old timers just came around me and just said, honey, you're here. That's the bottom line, is you're here. And it takes a lot of courage to come up here. And you're showing other alcoholics that you know you can do it. And that's why I am still really active in Alcoholics Anonymous, because of all the support and the love that I have gotten in the rooms. And tonight I have like so many people that came out to hear me. And, you know, just when I came in, I didn't feel lovable at all. I always get nervous. I always go to the bathroom. I get down on my knees. I ask God to speak through me, and hopefully he'll take over pretty quickly. I'm sober 22 years, and I'm 43 years old, and I'm going to share about what it was like, what happened, what it's like now. And I'm half French, half Moroccan. I was born in Nice, France. You know, my mom was this like beautiful Catholic, innocent, just an amazing woman. And my dad was Moroccan, and he owned nightclubs. He thought he was Al Pacino in Scarface. And he wore the open shirts, the gold chains. I was showing a picture of him to my friends earlier tonight, and there he is with 3 women, and none of them are my mom. And he was very animated. The thing is that was the first time I got to really see what alcoholism could do. You know, my dad had a rage, and he would get drunk, and he was a womanizer, and they tried to keep a lot of it from me, but when I was 4 years old, I woke up and I was in my pajamas, and my dad was in a drunken rage, and he was trying to throw my mom out of the penthouse window. And he had that moment of clarity that we get sometimes, you know. And shortly after that, my mom came home and found him in bed with a 17-year-old and finally decided to call it a day. You know, at a young age, even back then, I felt like I was different. I felt like there was something wrong with me. I felt bodily and mentally different from other children. And I would go to bed at night praying that I would wake up and be normal. Because whatever normal was, I knew that I wasn't it. And every day, throughout the day, I felt like I said the wrong thing, I did the wrong thing, I was stupid. And every night I would go to bed and I felt like pretty much I had failed. And prayed to God that the next day that I would feel normal. And, you know, I didn't realize that I had this big hole and I was an alcoholic, you know. And I didn't know that I had a disease. You know, I just felt like I was so different, and I felt like just different than others. And then my mom left my dad and went back to college, where she met an English professor in France, and she fell in love with him, and we were moving to America. And I was so excited, as she was, because especially like back in the late 60s, early 70s, you know, it's just like America seemed like such a faraway place, such an amazing place, you know. Everybody wants to come to America, and we were so excited, and we ended up in DeKalb, Illinois, which is home of the Del Monte plant station. I'm very familiar with John Deere, you know, gear. Their logo is a piece of flying corn. It's outside of Chicago, and like far away. And everybody's white with blonde hair and blue eyes, and they don't speak French. And, you know, I just felt like maybe America was the problem. And I didn't like it, you know. It's not till I moved to LA, but. So I was in Illinois, and we would, like, he was a professor. She went from one extreme to the other. And suddenly, you know, she's married to a very conservative man. And, you know, if we don't put on our slippers, we have to go up and down the stairs 20 times. I mean, like, there's all these rules, regulations, something we had never really dealt with my dad. And I didn't like it. You know, I spent many nights reading a lot of books and just, you know, looking out the window. But the good thing about the French culture is we strongly believe in drinking. And that, you know, my stepfather, for being an American, in his heart felt like he was French and spoke the language and enjoyed his wine. And I learned to enjoy his wine too. So what I would do is that we would always have these traditional French dinners, and I would just go around the table and finish off drinks. And I learned at a really young age, I think like my first drunk was like around 6, that alcohol took the edge off. And it's not like I started drinking on a daily basis at the age of 6, but I did make a correlation that, you know, alcohol took the edge off. Growing up in Illinois, it was like during the high school, during the school year, the school time we were there, and then during the holidays we would go back to France. And, you know, I just was not a happy kid. You know, I felt ugly, I felt less than, I didn't feel like I fitted in. And when we went back to France, I would feel like a little better. And then we would go back to Illinois, so I discovered alcohol. And in high school, I was the girl that kept the peppermint schnapps in the locker. And I was the one that learned how to smoke pot. It was like I was an athlete and a rebel, you know? And I just hated myself to such a point I can't describe it. It's so weird because, you know, by being sober, I've learned to be comfortable in my own skin. By being sober, I've learned to like who I am. And there was actually a time where I couldn't look in the mirror because I hated who I saw. And I thought that I was ugly, you know? And growing up in Illinois was just kind of weird for me, you know? It's just like I never felt a part of. And I just felt that I couldn't put my finger on it, you know? I just couldn't put my finger on it. And so I love geographics and the relocation program. So when I was 17, you know, I came to the conclusion that Illinois was the problem. And at that point, I'm smoking a lot of pot, I'm drinking a lot of alcohol, and I'm rebelling quietly, you know? And when I was 17, I made a decision to move to Morocco because I had just spent a little bit of time there with my dad's family, who was ultra conservative compared to my dad. But what I liked there is, like, I felt so much love, I felt so much warmth, and I knew I would be taken care of. And they had showed me this amazing moment for a couple months, and I wanted to go recapture that feeling. And what I didn't realize is I was going back into a Muslim culture. And when I went back, it was to live there, and everything changed. You know, suddenly my name wasn't Patti, I was Halima, I was Muslim, I was going to the mosque to go pray 5 times, you know, a day, and I was engaged to Omar all of a sudden. And I was wondering, like, how did my dad come from this family, you know? And in Morocco, I really didn't drink or use, you know, it's like you just don't, you know, I'm a woman, and it's the early 80s, and you just don't drink or use. I mean, I did, like, manage to find some hashish a couple times, and then again, you know, I'm still stuck with myself. Like, for a moment, I got lost into it. I started wearing the jalabas, the kaftan. I had the henna on my hands. You know, okay, so fine. Omar's my fiance. We're going to have 5 kids. You know, okay, fine. I'm Muslim. I give in. I surrender. And, you know, it's just like I'm a chameleon. And still to this day, I mean, you put me in Thailand and suddenly I become Thai. You know, you put me in Mexico, you know, I like pretend like I can speak Spanish. You know, you put me in Norway, it doesn't work. But you put me in England, I come up with a British accent, you know. I still will find myself just picking up things from people. So I'm in Morocco, and obviously this whole Omar thing has now come to light, and the reality has hit me about what's going to happen to my life. And I'm scared, and I want out. And my mom happened to be at UCLA getting her master's. And, you know, it was a little complicated. They had my passport. You know, it wasn't like they were going to let me go that easily. And thank God for my mom, because she devised a little plan, and it worked, and I ended up in Los Angeles, where I was like, wow, you know, this is such a diverse city. And it was so different than Illinois. But I was like so... I was so naive when I came here. You know, I'd never seen like a pimp, a prostitute, heroin, drugs. I mean, like real hardcore drugs. You know, any lesbians, anything. Like I had just never. No. No, my first night that I actually went out, I met 2 girls, and they seemed really cool. I was so happy I could make friends, and I ended up at Peanuts in Santa Monica Boulevard. And like I got a little scared, and I walked out in the parking lot, and then there was this big girl who was trying to like, you know, talk to me, and got upset that I didn't talk to her. And I was like such like a baby. I was like, ask these other girls, can you please walk me back into the club? And so this other girl walked me back into the club because I was so scared, and then she wanted to slow dance, and I passed out, and the paramedics came. Do you know? Like I was just, but I adapted really quickly. And I found drugs and alcohol in LA. I mean, like really found, you know, I was just fascinated. I was like Barbara Walters on the streets, you know. I just like was fascinated by everybody's life story, you know. And it was like Notorious had come to life for me, and which is like one of those crime shows. But I started going out, and I immediately like immersed myself in a scene that everybody said was really bad for me, and that's where I found my comfort. I found my comfort in Lower Companions, and the reason for that is I didn't want to hear that I was fucking up. I didn't want to hear that I was drinking too much. I didn't want to hear that I was doing too many drugs. I didn't want to hear it. I just wanted to be left alone. There was a time where I met these skateboarders, and they were fun. We like went up to San Francisco. I ended up getting into the punk scene. I opened up a squad on 3rd and Howard. I mean, like the shit that I would do, I would call home, and my mom would be like, what's your phone number? I'm like, I don't know, Mom. I'm a gypsy. And I just, you know, I'm living life. And, you know, and then I like got into the whole Beverly Hills scene, and I learned about eyeshadows, and, you know, got put on makeup and did that. And then, you know, it's just like I just was always searching for that place where I would feel comfortable. I would find a scene. I would immerse myself 110% into it. Then it got a little real. Then you got to know me. Then the like whatever the intoxication or whatever, that feeling, you know, wore off, and I needed to relocate quickly. Because once again, I don't know, I have a hole, that I'm an alcoholic, and the only thing that's going to fill it up is a power greater than myself, and it's definitely not drugs or alcohol. And so I found these people because they didn't judge me, I didn't judge them. And as long as I wasn't judged, it was fine. Because I really was at that point where I just wanted to do what I wanted to do. And I wanted to have fun. Because I felt like I had been so deprived my whole life, growing up so conservative, except for those moments where I hung out with my dad and suddenly like I'm in a fur coat, you know, drinking martinis and entertaining the, you know, French police department and just, you know, just crazy shit. And I just wanted to have fun. I just didn't want to feel. That's the bottom line. It's like I was in a lot of pain. I just didn't want to deal. I didn't want to feel. So what happened is I met my boyfriend, Jeff, and he was a junkie. And I didn't really know anything about that. I really believed when he told me he only shot up on the weekends. And by that time, I had been done with the punk scene, and I was back in LA, and you know, I'm the type that does really stupid things when I'm high. I like go to New York on a one-way ticket. I marry a stranger in Vegas, you know, because like I just don't think about consequences. And I just live in that moment, and whatever that thrill is, whatever that high is, you know, it gets my adrenaline going. So I met Jeff, and he introduced me to freebasing, and, life really, my disease really took off after that, because then I started incorporating, I tried telling people in AA that I was a social heroin user. And when I got sober, and they were like shaking their heads. But I did everything but shoot up. And the thing about Jeff is, I do believe I have angels that watch over me. The good thing is he did not let me shoot up. And if anybody had put a needle in my arm, he would have hurt them. And thank God, because the way I drank and used, I should be dead. And what happened with Jeff is he died of this disease. And he died in Silver Lake, and the people that he was getting high with couldn't deal with it, so they just left his body in a trash can. And that should have been my wake-up call, I'm going to be 21 years old. I am now not looking that great. I'm yellow. I'm emaciated. I have abscesses. This disease is really taking a toll on my body. And I don't know what to do. I'm so lost. That's the thing is I have no idea what to do, where to go. And I'm just surrounded by everybody who's just getting high. You come to my apartment, my roommate Valerie is high. Everybody comes over, everybody's high. And God, got my attention the only way he knew he could is, this is my 12-step call. I'm at the Rainbow Bar and Grill having some Long Island iced teas, and I meet this lady, Janet T., who sits next to me, and she tells me how she goes to Cocaine Anonymous. And she has these chips, because that's what set the conversation. And as we share some Tuinals, some Secondols, have a couple Long Island iced teas, she tells me about the program, the 12 steps, and how it works. It felt like there was hope. So she proceeded, I ended up ODing that night. So, and thank God I was with Janet. She was a nurse, It's funny because we laugh about this, but when initially it's just there's so much pain, and it's so funny we can laugh about the pain and the despair that we have, and I just felt like the biggest loser. I felt I didn't even know if I wanted to live. And now I look back at some of this stuff, I'm like, oh my God, I can laugh at myself now. So I started going to meetings, and I was the girl that went to meetings loaded. I would have a joint and come and hear the message, and I would have a drink. And the bottom line is I didn't hear anything, but I felt something. I felt like there was hope. And I just felt something in these rooms. And I kept coming back, and, I would sit in the back, and I would try to get a couple days together. I didn't really know what was going on. And then it was, I got sober August 14th, so August 12th. My mom was coming into town. And when my mom came into town, I always made a point of not getting high before my mom came into town because I didn't want her to see how fucked up I'd gotten. And at that point, my mom cut me off, and they were done helping me. And I just couldn't stop. It just started off as a little favor. I was just going to cop for a friend, just a little favor. This was a little thank you. And next thing you know, I'm on a full run. And when my mom gets there, I OD in front of my mom. And what I came to was a woman that gave birth to me, that loved me, that was looking at a corpse because I was no longer, the Patti she knew was no longer there. She was looking at my corpse, and she was crying because she was looking for her daughter, and I was gone. And for some reason that touched me. I didn't really care if I lived or died. Part of me got sober so Jeff up in heaven could see, because it was a dream for us to get, for me not to be this involved in drugs. So part of me think I stayed sober in the beginning for Jeff, for my mom. The bottom line is I could no longer drink or use, and that was my bottom. And I told my mom that I had been going to these I was really torn. Do I go back to Morocco and maybe Omar wasn't such a bad idea? Or do I go to, AA? And the people in the AA was just, 90 days, 90 meetings, just don't make any rash decisions. Don't, you don't need to go to Morocco, just, stay. And so I told my mom, I made a phone call from a payphone, and I found out that there was a meeting Saturday night at the Cedars where they do sundowners. And my mom had never really, didn't really know what Coke was. So I took her to St. Elmo's Fire, that movie. Demi Moore's a Coke addict, so I could kind of break it down for my mom. I thought I'd ease her into it slowly. And then we go to this meeting, and my mom's never been exposed to AA in any way, and I didn't know, but it was like an all-gay meeting. So my mom's waiting to see what else I need to tell her, And I'm running into people I know, and it was just, that was the first time I heard the speaker. This guy got up, and I heard him. I related to him. He told my story. I mean, he wasn't Halima or anything, but he told my story. And I related to his pain. I related to his despair. I related to his behavior, to what he felt. And I just knew this is where I needed to stay. So they were like, are you willing to go to any lengths? And I was like, yeah, sure. I don't know what that means. And they were like, well, you have to go to meetings every day. And you have to be willing to take direction. And you just bring the body and the mind will follow. So, when I had 5 days sober, I didn't have a car, and I called my drug dealer to come and pick me up. They told me that was, not a good idea. I had, no concept. I had no concept how this was going to work. And they told me that I had to be willing to raise my hand and say, hey, I'm Patti, I can't go home and stay at my house because it's drug infested. I'm got 4 days sober, 6 days sober, whatever it is, and could you please let me stay on your couch? And that is really humbling, to have to do that. And I didn't realize, I had great insurance, and I could have been in one of those nice little rehabs with, a television and a bed. But, that was, what needed to happen to me. I needed to have my back up against the wall, and I needed to have enough desperation that I was willing to go to any length that would set the foundation that would save my ass later. And so I did it. I raised my hand. I slept on different couches. I learned what the 13th step was immediately. I learned to stay with women, and I just showed up. I took the RTD bus, I just was I had no money. And, and when I had 8 days sober, I was like, I fucked up so bad in my life. My parents have cut me off. I have, totally unemployable. I'm, fucked up. I need to do this, and I need to do that, and I need to do this. And people are like, honey, you got 8 days. You just need to show up. I was like, no, you don't understand. They're like, no, but we do. See, I thought that I was bodily and mentally different from others. You told me I was bodily and mentally different from others, but I also felt like I was bodily and mentally different from you. I just felt like I was just completely different from the human race. I didn't know how this was going to work. You guys came up here, talked about miracles, salute. I didn't understand anything. I just kept showing up, I was completely out of my mind. And the good thing is that a lot of people took me under their wing. They gave me direction. And it was so simple. I'll never forget, one of the lessons I learned is, my first year was very humbling. It was very humiliating. I was very poor. It was, I never want to go through it again. And there was this guy who was sober, and he was really wealthy, and I thought I'd call him and, tell him how sad my life was, and maybe he would feel sorry for me and, help me out, $500. And so I called him, and I was telling him how, I was in a jam. And he just said, Patti, do you have a roof over your head? Oh, hey, are you sober today? And I said, yes. Have you been to a meeting? I'm like, yes. He goes, do you have a roof over your head? I'm looking up, not much, but yes. He goes, have you eaten today? I'm like, a burrito. He goes, do you have any money in your pocket? I'm like, $5. He goes, then you're okay for today. You're sober, you've eaten, you have a roof over your head. Just for today, you're okay. Now, that wasn't the answer I was looking for. And it took me a while to really get it. And another lesson I got is I had, it took me a long time to really feel like I had a conscious contact with God. They say don't leave before the miracle happens. And the thing is, the miracle is happening. It's just we don't always feel it. And I really feel like, mine was they say sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. I felt like I was the slower, I was in that group. It was going to happen slower, like a lot slower. And so I, for a long time, like I've always believed in God. I've always prayed like, dear God, please don't let me get arrested. Dear God, please, let me get my drugs. Dear God, don't let me get in trouble. And so now, I'm praying, but I'm not really feeling that conscious contact, like really feeling it. And when I had 6 years sober, I was at a meeting. It was a Wednesday night, and I was letting you know my plans for my life and what was going on. And I had like pretty much, my month planned out and what was going to happen and, the next year of my life. And the next day, I was in the emergency room hemorrhaging and, and in surgery. And I came to a doctor letting me know that I was very lucky to be alive. I don't remember what exactly happened. I just, because I was out of it for the surgery, I just like came to, and half of AA was in my hospital room because it was like a long procedure, and my friends got on the phone with other friends, and, I woke up to all sorts of people, and I really got that. It's really one day at a time. And no matter what I have planned for myself, I don't really know what tomorrow holds, so I better really just stay in that moment and try to make the most out of today. And I also know by being sober long enough and going through so many different situations that I'm going to be taken care of, It took me a while to get into the 12 steps. I mean, I did read the book when I was drunk, and then I started reading it sober, and it just took a while for me to, I kind of thought the language was kind of boring, and, and then I really got into it, and I started seeing things, My serenity level is directly proportional to my expectations. I love that, that's been another one of my lessons. The thing is, I came in here and I have this sense of entitlement, and if I'm this way, then you need to be this way. And that's not always the case, because I expect you to be this way. If I'm like this, you're going to be like that. But you're not always like that. And to be able to give everybody that freedom and just let them be who they are and accept them just the way they are, it just... just how far do I want them in my life and how far do I want to take it, but to really, lower those expectations so I can have a little more freedom in here. Because when I came in here, this was so loud. It was loud, and it had nothing good to share, And the first 3 steps are so important to me because when I get really, like they say, pause when agitated. When I get really agitated, I'm like, oh, Patti, I'm powerless over drugs and alcohol, people, places, things, and situations. And then I have to acknowledge that I'm crazy at that moment, which my false pride hates, and ask a power greater than myself, which is not men, shopping, sex, or drugs, to restore me to sanity. And then once I've been restored to sanity, or at least think I have been, then I can do what's in front of me. And then I can live in God's will. And, a lot of my early days, I spent a lot of writing because I would get so obsessed with situations. I would get so obsessed with things that weren't working, And when I look back at that writing, I'm just it's all about learning to turn my life and will over to the care of God as I understand Him. And that was one of the hardest things to do. And they would go, well, and Patti, sometimes when you're holding on and you're holding on even tighter and tighter, that's when you need to start letting go. When you feel like you're going against the grain, that's when you need to start letting go. And I'm I'm Arab. I don't want to let go, I want to hold on, And I recently went back to Morocco a couple years ago and kind of made peace with that. Because when I left under, quickly. And, a lot of my questions have been answered in sobriety. When I stopped speaking to my dad for a while, he was just so toxic, and I just really I kept thinking one day my dad's going to grow up and we're going to sit down and have a normal daughter-father discussion. And what happened is one day I heard a rumor from somebody that knew me growing up in Europe that my dad had died of AIDS. And I believed that. I mean, he was a womanizer, and I was just so devastated because I was like, God, I had all these other questions, like, you know, did he even think about me? Did I have any sisters or brothers? You know, how did he feel about my mom? And, you know, like all those questions that I never got answered. And I called the American Embassy in Morocco, and they were closed, but there was a lady named Toria who had came into work early that day, and she said, I said, look, I'm calling from LA, and I'm just trying to find my dad, and I believe, you know, he's buried in Morocco, and maybe you could help me, like, find my family. And she's like, well, that's, you know, we really don't do that, but I've heard of your family, and let me see what I can do. And she called me, like, so for, like, you know, a good 36 hours, I mourned the death of my dad, and I had all these questions, you know, and I just thought, this is the way it's going to be. I need to get an acceptance. I'm never going to have these answers, and, you know, and then I got a phone call from Tori at the embassy. She's like, oh, you know what, your dad actually has cancer, and but he's alive. He's waiting for your call. And then suddenly I was like, but I'm not ready to talk to him. I mean, like, I was just like, I mean, you know. Oh my God. And, you know, finally I picked up the phone, and, you know, and no, there was no other brothers or sisters. And, you know, my dad never really grew up, and that's okay. But I got to talk to him, and I got to have a lot of those questions answered, which for me in sobriety, what I've learned is that I am, you know, I have a lot of questions. I always have. I want to know how it's going to work, when it's going to work. I'm very black and white. Are you in? Are you out? I don't do well with this gray area thing. Still to this day, I don't like the gray area. Gray area means uncomfortability, which also means growth for the old timers who are around me. But for me, it just means, you know, I have to learn how to sit still because I got loaded behind gray areas. You know, that's where my pain comes. That's where my uncomfortability comes. So I got lost for a second, but it answered a lot of questions, and, you know, and I learned how to just really accept him for who he was and be able to, like, kind of close that chapter and go back to Morocco and meet the lady who helped me, who didn't really need to, and meet my latest of probably like 9 stepmothers who I actually liked. And, you know, I actually brought somebody from Alcoholics Anonymous with me. One of my best friends came with me. She thought we're going to ride camels and have this amazing, like, Club Med vacation. And, you know, because sometimes people, like, you know, especially if they don't know that kind of culture, they're like, oh, maybe Patty's exaggerating a little. But no, she got to see what it was like to be a hostage of an overbearing Arab family. And we prayed to Jesus and did the Serenity Prayer every night. But it was an amazing experience in the sense, like, none of this stuff would have ever happened, because if I was getting loaded, I really believed that I would be dead, in jail, or in an institution, you know, because that is eventually where this disease is going to lead. I've seen it over and over and over again with girlfriends, with friends, with people. They come in, they're a little tore up, they look good, they go back out, they come back in, they go back out, and sometimes they don't come back in, you know, and then I get to go to funerals, and I get to see, you know, where like a couple years ago it was working for them, kind of, but today it's not, and I get to see how it really just destroys beautiful human beings, which we are. You know, we're beautiful human beings, and we're so lucky that we have found Alcoholics Anonymous, because the best part about Alcoholics Anonymous is we never have to go through anything alone. I've never had to go through the death of my dad, a job loss, a breakup, anything. I don't have to go through it alone. You know, there's somebody always there that has that experience, strength, and hope. And then what happens by staying sober, God puts the most amazing people in my life, because I didn't know, like, what kind, you know, I didn't want to be lonely, and, you know, I definitely needed new friends, because the friends that I had, I obviously couldn't hang out with anymore. And I started meeting some amazing people, and some of them stayed, and then, you know, some of them were put in my life just for a moment. And then I started working the steps, and by working the steps and letting a power greater than me in my life, you know, I started getting that comfortability, and then I started giving back what was so freely given to me. You know, I sponsor some amazing girls. It shocks me that they want what I have, you know? Like, sometimes I'm like, I'm shocked that I have 22 years, you know? Like, I came in here because I just didn't want to die, didn't know how it was going to work, and then something magical happened. It didn't happen right away. I kept thinking, when is it going to happen for me, you know? Sometimes slowly. Progress, not perfection. I'd be like, I just want to know when. When am I going to be okay? And I'm glad, you know, because as I stayed here, I started becoming okay. And you know what? I'm never going to have the answers. Not all of them. I'm going to get them in God's time. That's where I got lost. It's like what I learned is that I will get my answers in God's time, not on my time. So sometimes, you know, if I'm like, oh, why did he leave? Or why did I get fired? Or, you know, like all the stuff that I went through, like, you know, my first 10 years, I realize, like, I'll get my answers, but not right away. And sometimes I won't, and I just have to get into acceptance. The beauty thing about this program is it works. You know, if you stick here, you stick around, this program is really an amazing program because you're not alone, and it works. And you find some sort of peace, you find some sort of serenity, you know, and the noise gets quieter, and you learn how to manage that noise, and the promises do come true, you know. I now know how to handle most situations that baffle me, and that is such a comfort. And I have beautiful women in my life that I get to sponsor, and beautiful people. I have like Strawberry, Michelle, Alexa, James, Veronica, my wild child, and you know, and poor Danny, you know, let me tell you about Danny. You know, I met this girl a couple months ago at a party, and I just really liked her, and we exchanged numbers, and we started talking. And she's French, I'm French, so we have that common bond. And one day she told me, you know, she had a friend, and, you know, and she has no clue about AA, alcoholism, or anything. And she said, oh, I feel bad, you know, he's drinking. He said he relapsed. I'm like, oh, honey, we got a wet one on your hands. I'm like, you know what, you just let him know that your friend Patty's sober a couple years. And why don't, you know, if he wants to, you know, talk, have him call me. So she promptly had him call me immediately. And you know, I had him meet me at a meeting, and he didn't know he was meeting like Miss Alcoholics Anonymous. So I was like introducing him to everyone and torturing him, but because I really want to see you get it. I want to see all of us get it. You know, I know what this disease does, and I know how cunning, baffling, and powerful this disease is, and I want to give back. I'm passionate about getting sober. I'm passionate about staying sober. I want to give back what has, you know, been given to me, because even when I didn't feel like it could work, by staying here, I realized that it could work. So if you're new, you know, stick up as close to the front as possible so you can hear that message, because if you're anything like me, I have like a very short attention span, and still to this day I have to sit up front so I can hear that message, get commitments, get a sponsor, start reading the big book, and start like reaching out and making some friends so you can like all walk down this path, and you never have to feel like this again. And that's what they told me. I never have to feel like this again. And, you know, I didn't believe them, but it's true. And just happy birthday to the Jeff. And you know, to everybody who took chips, it's such an exciting time, you know. That was one of my favorite times, to come up and take a chip, because I felt like, you know what, I'm doing it. Even though I don't think I can do it, I'm actually doing it. And just thank you so much for listening.